Hi and welcome to this DCP web tutorial. In today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to join multiple MP3 files into a single file. Now if you're doing audio podcasts, this is a useful way of combining all of your MP3s that you've recorded onto your mobile device and then joining them into a single MP3 file at the end. You can also use this software to edit your MP3 files, so you can do some changes to them, you can cut content out, and then you can join all of those MP3s into a single file which you can use as a download file for your audio podcast. You can also use the same exercise if you're doing video production and you want to do some audio editing for your video content up front, then you can use the software to do that as well. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Google and we're going to type in Audacity. You can see that it's a free audio editor and recorder. So we're going to click on the link. It's going to take us through to this website. I'm going to click on the download, and in this download section I've got the Windows, Mac or Linux version. I'm going to click on the Windows version, and then I'm going to actually select this version here. There's two different types here. This one contains everything that you're going to need, and this version has pretty much what you need but without any of the help files. But I would strongly recommend that you download this version so you've got all the help files there to help you along the way if you've got any problems. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the link, and it's going to ask me to save, and I'm going to click the save. I've already downloaded this application already, so I've got a few versions listed here. So I'm going to stop the download. Once it's finished downloading, launch the application and install it on your computer. It's a pretty straightforward process, and as soon as you've got that application installed, you can go ahead and launch it. So here you can see, if I go to all programs, you see Audacity is listed here at the top. I'm going to go ahead and launch the application, and it's going to load up, and it's just going to load up in its default screen. There's no content in the actual application at the moment. I've got a folder over here, and in that folder I've got 3 MP3 tracks, and these could have been audio tracks with speech in them for your podcast, but in this case I'm using some music tracks just to show you the process. But the process, whether it's audio, music or it's speech, it's all going to be the same. The MP3 is the MP3 file. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag and drop the track into the Audacity application, and it's going to do some importing process here. It takes a few seconds. This happens to be a 5-minute and 45-second audio track. You can increase or decrease the volume as you're doing your work, and this function here will actually allow you to speed up or reduce the playback speed. I would leave it as its default because you don't really want to slow the track down, especially if it's speech, or speed it up. It's not going to sound right. So leave this as its default. I'm going to go ahead and click the play button, and you can see the track plays straight away. So as soon as I click that play button, you can see in the waveform the track begins straight away. It's quite abrupt, but at this end you can see it's gradually fading out. So really what I want to do with this track as a little example of editing is I may want to reduce the actual length of this track. Let's say if I want to get rid of all of this information here, I don't really want any of this. I just want this from 3 minutes to 5 minutes 45 seconds. So I want to get rid of all of this content. The way that I can simply do that is I use my left mouse button. I'm going to hold it down. I'm going to drag all the way across to highlight this section here. You can see it grey highlighted at the top, and you can do edit, remove audio or label. You can cut it or delete it. So we're going to cut it in this example, and you can see that it's removed all of that beginning of that track. Just that track was a bit too long, or that might have been some content that you didn't want. It might even be a smaller amount. You may want to just select 10 seconds worth and delete it because it was just not correct at the beginning of your audio track. That's an easy way of editing and removing parts of the content in your audio file. That's just a little brief example of how you can go ahead and edit these tracks. This audio track, if you click this back arrow, it's going to move the timeline right to the beginning again, and we click play again, and we can still see that the music starts quite abruptly, and really what we want is we can see it fades out nicely here. We want to try and fade it in nicely here. So the way that we can do fade the audio into the track as it starts is we need to determine how long that duration of that fade is going to be. In this case, I only want it to be like 10 seconds. So we can see this is the 15-second marker. So I'm going to hide. You can see these little dots here. If you can see that quite clearly, here's the dot right here, and that will be our 10-second point. So I'm going to click here with my mouse and drag back to highlight these 10 seconds here. I'm going to go to effects and I'm going to do fading. Now when we play the track, I'm going to go back to the beginning. You can see it's gradually fading in nicely. And if you're doing audio podcasts and you had a bit of music at the beginning and you wanted to fade that music in, that's just a nice quick way of doing that. So that's just some basic editing tips. You can highlight sections in the middle and you can cut them out. You can move them around. So you could cut this middle section out here and put it at the end of the track. You can do a lot of stuff with this application. You need to really play around and experiment with it. This is just some brief examples of what you can do. So really the objective of this tutorial was to get these other two MP3 files and combine them into one long MP3. So we're going to select and highlight with our mouse the other two tracks, track number 2 and track number 3. We're going to drag and drop them into this grey section down the bottom here. This is going to take a few seconds to import. And I'm going to expand this window just so we can see it a bit more. And we need to scroll up and down because there's quite a lot of content here. And what you'll notice is there's a track, there's an audio waveform here and there's an audio waveform below. So for each track we have a left and right stereo. So this is stereo audio, so we have a left channel and a right channel. Although these look absolutely identical, in some MP3 files the left and right hand side may have slightly different audio. But in this case, they're pretty much identical as far as I can see. Now, in order to get this second track playing at the end, to start at the end of this track, we need to use the time shift tool here. I'm going to hover over it. It's like these little 2 pointy arrows. So I'm going to click on the time shift tool and I'm going to click on this audio track here and drag it all the way across. And when I get to the end of the first track, you're going to see it's going to highlight this yellow line. It's almost snapping it to the end. That's really what I want. I want it to snap to the end there. So this one will fade out and then this one will start again. And this third track, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to drag it all the way across. We're going to need to use this little slider here to see the end of this track here. We're going to keep dragging it all the way across and it's going to snap to the end. There it is, it's snapped. Now we have 3 tracks and they're not going to overlap. They're going to play one after the other. I'm just going to undo that quickly. If we were to leave the file like this, all 3 tracks will play at the same time. And it's going to be a bit of a mess, especially if it's speech audio. You're going to have 3 speeches all running at the same time. So you don't want to do that. You want to time shift it, move it across, snap it when it goes to yellow, and then do the same for your third track. And you could have had 10 tracks in here and you could have sequenced all of them in the same way. So there you go, you can see the 3 tracks in order. That's exactly what I want. Maybe on this track here, we're going to go back to the selection tool, and on this track here, we're going to select this first part and we're going to effect and fade that one in as well. So as this one fades out, it's going to go silent for a few seconds, and then this one's going to fade in. It's only going to be like a 2-second silence here. You can see where the line is flat there. So now we have these 3 tracks in sequence. We want to export them into a single file. So before we do that, we should really save our work. So we're going to go to File, Save This Project, and we're going to call it Joint MP3 File. And this is not actually the MP3 file itself. This is an Audacity project. What it really means is that if at any point we need to come back and do some editing to this audio sequence, maybe we want to remove the first part and replace it with something completely different, then we can go ahead and launch or load that file and it will show us this exact same view again. It's just a quick way of getting back to this view, just like saving any other document. The other thing we need to do is go to preferences here, and under preferences we need to go to, let's find this, libraries, and in libraries we need to make sure that this lame encoder, this is an MP3 encoder. Now depending on when you downloaded Audacity, it will depend on whether this was installed with it or not, but if for any reason when you try and do the export you get a message saying that this encoder is not installed, then you can go ahead and click this download button here. When you click this download button, it's going to take you to a website. This is actually Audacity's website, and here's some instructions on how to go ahead and get this lame encoder. This is the actual page where you can download the encoder. So I'm just going to show you that quickly. I'm going to click on this link. It's going to take me through to this website, and as I scroll down there's going to be this lame encoder here. So this is quite important. If this is not installed on your machine, you're not going to be able to export the file as an MP3 file. So I'm going to click on this link, and it's going to ask me to save the file. I'm going to save it. I'm going to just close this window, we don't need that anymore. It's a very small file, and here it is, this lame encoder. It's downloaded, and my Norton's is telling me that it's a safe file, so it's safe to download and install. I'm going to click on the installation and run the application. Let's just minimize that. So it takes a few seconds to load, and here I'm going to select yes. I'm going to click next, and you can see that when we install it, it's going to install it in the lame for Audacity, so it's going to install it in the correct folder for this application, the actual encoder itself. So I'm going to click next and install. It takes a few seconds, and then when we click locate, we can see that the encoder, this lame enc.deal, this file here has been installed correctly. Now we can go ahead and export this sequence as an MP3 file. So we're going to close this all down. This is all fine, and we're going to go to File, Export, and it's going to ask us what we want to call the MP3 file. I'm just going to save this to the desktop for now. I'm going to leave it as joint MP3 file. I'm going to click on Options, and in Options I'm going to leave the bitrate constant. I don't want it to vary. I'm going to do another tutorial about bit rates, but basically, you know, the higher the bit rate, the better the quality. But if you aim around 128 kilobytes, you're going to get probably, you know, good enough quality audio. It's going to be like a CD quality audio, so it's going to be good enough. That's going to be more than good enough to upload to your website as a podcast MP3. You don't really need 320 kilobytes. That's a bit over the top. And the higher the kilobit rate, the larger the file will be. So a good compromise is around 128. It's going to sound good, and it's going to load. It's going to be a smaller file to download. We're going to use joint stereo. This will also reduce the file size as well. So rather than having two separate stereo tracks, we're going to just join those into one stereo joint file within this file. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click the save button, and it's going to tell me your tracks will be mixed down to two stereo channels in the exported file. That's fine, it's not a problem. It would have been a problem if the two left and right channels had completely different waveforms in there, meaning that the actual audio in here was different, but they're identical. And when you do an MP3 recording for a podcast, the left and right channels are going to be the same, so this is not a problem. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to ask me to put in an artist name. You should put an artist name in here, a track title, an album title if necessary, the track number, the year, the genre, and any comments that you want to put in here. And we're going to go ahead and click the OK button. It's going to take a bit of time to actually do the export, and it's not instantaneous. It's got to join all of these 3 MP3 tracks into one final file, but we can see it's going to take about 30 seconds or so to do that. So we're just going to wait for that to happen. And depending on the computer you're using, this process could be a lot quicker or even a lot slower, so it really depends on the machine that you're using how fast this encoding will happen. It's almost done. Okay, it's all done. I'm going to close down Audacity, and I'm going to see this MP3 file on my desktop here. I'm just going to check the properties, and we can see it's 8.21 megabytes. That's fine. And we're going to just open this track. So I'm going to open it and give it a little play in Windows Media Player. And it sounds fine. And if I drag the timeline across, or as I'm dragging the timeline, you can see, if I just move it to the end for example, you can see it's 8 minutes and 58 seconds long. So really what we've done here is we've taken the three completely different audio tracks, and we've joined them all into one sequence to create that final 8 minutes and 58 second file. So that's the conclusion of this tutorial. I'm just going to drag and drop this into this folder so we've got all of the files in one location. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.